John 1:12 says this, "But to all who believe him and accepted him, he gave them the right to become children of God." I love this because God has designed us to grow in family. This is where the wisdom flows. This is where life flows. This is where love flows. This is where health flows. This is where strength flows. It's all within the family unit. And it's so important to God that even he uses the language of family to talk about who he is to us. He calls himself Father. And when he talks about his people, he is talking in the context of children. When we come to know Jesus as our personal Lord and Savior, we actually enter into adoption. And he adopts us as his children. This is an important thing to God because he knows the way that he has set it up is that this is where we will know who we are. This is where we will know his love. This is where we will know his grace. This is where we will know the truth. Is when we enter into the family unit. But over the last 100 years, you may well know that the traditional family unit where there is a mother and a father and the children are being raised in the home, that is actually been broken down. There are many factors about this. Let me just name a couple. The fact is, in the last 100 years, we've had 2 world wars. A lot of our fathers, brothers, sons went to war and never came back. And the ones who did come back never came back the same. So maybe they might have been present in the home, but they were absent in their hearts and in their minds because of the trauma that they had experienced. And then we had the social revolution of the 60s. And it was all free love, and we don't need the traditional sense of family. It's all, do what feels good. And we're still, within the repercussions of those campaigns and those philosophies even today. But then you've got the issue of the whole breakdown of family comes with it, the breakdown of communication. And that's what we're going to be talking about this afternoon, church, is communication in the family. Now, we all know that girls are better communicators than boys. Is that true? No, I hear no. But there are some, I don't know for what reason, but for many reasons, communication's an issue. They say that if a family is experiencing difficulty, the number one complaint is usually communication or poor communication. It's a massive deal. Think about all the difficulties in your relationships. And chances are, communication is probably one of the main things. Maybe someone's not communicating enough. Maybe it's how they're communicating. Maybe you're the one who's doing all the chasing. Maybe you're the one who wants to, you don't want to talk. But we're all, it just seems to be a universal thing. But then, add to that the digital technology revolution. And now, if we weren't talking to each other before, well, we're not talking to each other even more now because we're online. I'm just going to show you some of the devices that I live by in my everyday. This is my computer, which is basically a big version of my phone. So my phone has got everything. It's got everything on it. It's got my diary. It's got my social media. I'm even learning Spanish on my phone. And what else have I got here? It's got work. It's got my shopping. It's got my shopping on my phone. So I've got pretty much all my life. I could very much be on my phone 24/7 because there's always something to do. There's always something to be happening. But it's not. I don't only have just my phone. Nope. I have my mini iPad, which is also just another version of my phone, just a little bit bigger. So there, is my phone, my mini iPad, my computer, which is just another version of both of those. But then, you see, this has just gone to another whole level. This is my Kindle. And I love my Kindle. I mean, I think I'd be devastated if I lost my phone, but I would be equally, if not more, devastated if I lost my Kindle. It's got all my books. It's got, like, the things that I'm watching. It's just, I love this thing. This thing, we've bonded. We've bonded together, you know, many nights where I've been waiting for sleep to come and I've been reading on my Kindle. This Kindle's been there for me. You know what I'm saying? So we've got, like, the digital revolution, and now we are looking at this term. And Pastor Mark introduced it last week. I don't know if you clocked it, but he said our homes have moved from being where we are, places where we are together, to being places where we are alone together. And I have to admit, that term stopped me in my tracks. I was a little bit like, oh my goodness, I think I can totally relate to that. It's almost like we get so peopled out. That's my term. I don't know if that is a term, but that's how I describe it. We go to our jobs and we're busy and we're dealing with people. And it's almost like when you get home, you get peopled out. And you're like, yeah, I just need my space. And so oftentimes you can go to the four corners of the house and everybody's on their device. Or you can actually say, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to stay in the same room, but you can be on the sofa, you could be at the dining room table, and everybody is on some sort of device. And this is what has birthed the term alone together. And I thought, I don't know if that's the way I want to live. It's like everybody has a need for intimacy. Everybody has a need, and let's not relegate intimacy to just physical intimacy. Intimacy means to be known. Everybody has a desire to know somebody and to be known. Everybody has a desire to be supported. Everybody has a need to be celebrated. Everybody has a need to be accepted and approved of. Everybody needs a space in a relationship where they can express a whole range of emotions, from anger, disappointment, sadness, irrationality, to happiness and hopefulness, and a whole range of emotions in a relationship where it's safe. Everybody needs to have empathy. We need somebody in our world that's going to empathize with us. It's not going to make us feel like a freak because we're experiencing what we're experiencing or thinking what we're thinking, but it can actually understand where we're coming from. And with the digital revolution, we are actually looking for that kind of intimacy online. We are now plugging into our devices for connection, and we are unplugging from our relationships. I mean, think about Facebook. Think about the fact that I can go on any person's Facebook profile, depending on what they have chosen to reveal, and let's just face it, it's pretty standard that people will reveal their name, they will reveal where they live, they will reveal their age, some of us, and they will reveal what their favorite movies are, what their favorite authors are, what their favorite quotes are. I don't even know Glenn's favorite. No, I do know Glenn's favorite quote. But you know what I mean? We've got all this information online, and then we can message each other, and we can send videos to each other, and we can FaceTime each other, and we can Facebook Live each other, and then we can go on Instagram. And now I can actually go on somebody's profile and pretty much see their life in pictures. I can sometimes see their childhood. I can see their family. I can see, where they've been. I can see even what they're eating. I mean, this is crazy. A lot of people saying that our young people or even people of today, we're getting addicted to our devices. But I'm not sure if we're addicted to the technology as much as we are addicted to a feeling of connection. That the feeling of connection is addictive. What is happening is that we don't want to be alone. And if we can just get on Instagram, if we can just get on social media, if we can just connect, then maybe we will not feel so alone. We want to feel heard. And so what we do is we tell people what we're thinking, and we tell people how we're feeling, and we want to be heard. You can get onto a social media forum, and you can say whatever you want, and you've got potentially hundreds of people ready to listen to you and what you've got to say. And we think this is community. We think this is connection. But the fact is that we're sacrificing intimacy for connection. If society's building blocks are the family, then the building blocks of the family is communication. And we are experiencing a crisis of communication. Not that we were great at it before the digital technology came to play, but we're even worse now. Now we've got families, I don't know if it came up, where we got a family where we can be together, but we're on our own devices. Now we don't want to really talk to one another. We want to do what is interesting to us. You see, what you want to watch on TV is not interesting to me, so I'm just going to get my other device and I'm going to watch what I want to watch. And the thing is that we're starting to disconnect from each other because it's just not interesting. We have different interests, and we can zone out of what we don't like and zone into what we do like. You see, if a video is not interesting to me, I flick it up, watch something else. It's all about what interests me, and we're experiencing a breakdown. To be honest, it looks like it's the answer, doesn't it? The fact that you can interface with anybody, anywhere, anytime, any place in the world, this looks like the answer. It looks like connection. It looks like this could be the very thing that we need in terms of needing intimacy. But the fact is, we're getting sick. Depression, anxiety, stress, all-time high. They're saying now that they've got robots that they're going to build, or they have already built, for the elderly and for the sick and for children, so that they have companions. So they have somebody who they can talk to. They have somebody who's going to listen to them. It sounds like the answer, doesn't it? But the fact is, that's not the way we were wired. God is not an online God, but He's a face-to-face God. You see, Adam and Eve, they were in the garden, and in the cool of the day, God would come down and He would talk and walk with Adam. He was a face-to-face kind of God. One of our forefathers, Jacob, he had a moment where he wrestled with God, and he said these words. He said, I have seen God face-to-face and I have survived. And in Exodus 33, verse 11, it talks about how the Lord would talk. Here we go. The Lord would speak to Moses face-to-face, like one speaks to a friend. Even in the Old Testament, God was a face-to-face kind of God. But when He wanted to communicate His love, when He wanted to communicate His nature, when He wanted to communicate His purpose, when He wanted to communicate His kingdom, when He wanted to communicate who He was to His people, He sent His Son. He didn't send a device. Have you ever thought about that? You thought, well, God, if you really wanted your message to go out, surely you would have come now. You would have come now because we've got online streaming, we've got all these, social media platforms. God, we could so look after your marketing campaign. This is what you do to get more likes. This is what you do to get more followers. This is how you market yourself. Why didn't God choose now to bring his message? Why did he choose a backward place that nobody had ever heard of with only a few people? It's because he's a face-to-face God. He's a face-to-face God because there are only so many things that can be achieved online. There's only so many things that can be achieved digitally. There's only a certain amount of things that can be achieved face-to-face. You see, through Jesus, he wanted to show who he was. Through Jesus, he wanted to demonstrate his love. Through Jesus, he wanted to demonstrate what his kingdom was like. He wanted to communicate himself. He didn't want to just communicate a message. He didn't want to just give information. He wanted to show himself. He wanted us to know him personally. And he couldn't do that any other way than to turn up and look us in the eye and talk to us face to face. That's where life comes from. That's where love comes from. That's where we see each other. That's where we understand who each other are. It's important because that's where we hear the truth. How many times have you read a text and you thought, I could read this many ways. Are they ticked with me? Are they happy? How many of us have maybe, just made a whole movie out of one text? It's all bad. And then you go and you see that person face to face and you realize, oh, you totally got it wrong. Because face to face communication is powerful. Now, what we're going to do right now in this moment of the message is that we're going to do some participation. Because this is how we're going to illustrate the power of face-to-face, eye-to-eye contact. I'm going to put 60 seconds up on the screen, and I want you to pair up with whoever's next to you. And for 60 seconds, I want you to look that person in the eye, and I don't want you to say anything. I just want you to look at them for 60 seconds. Are you ready? Pair up. Now, this is going to be fun for people who know each other, and it's going to be especially fun for those who don't know each other. Are you ready? Okay, there's far too much talking right now. Okay, ready, guys? After 3, put 60 seconds on the clock. 1, 2, 3. Just look. Keep looking. Hang in there. Hang in there. We're halfway through. Just look. Look. You're doing great. Keep looking. Nearly there. Two, 1, 0. Well done. Give yourselves a hand. How do we go? Put your hand up if you found that really easy. Okay, were you with, for those people who have their hands up, were you with somebody you knew? Okay. Who found that really hard? More honest people in the 12 o'clock than the 10 o'clock for sure. Eye to eye, face to face is not easy. It's not easy. That's why I think most of us, or a lot of our society, are turning to the device. But the thing is that this is not doing us any good. That we are becoming ill. Not only that, but it has even wider repercussions. Depression, stress, anxiety, all on the rise. Also, loss of empathy. People not being able to empathize anymore. This is powerful. This is sobering. Because it is through the face-to-face contact that we actually hear the truth, that we actually feel loved, that we actually learn. It's the only way that we can grow. It's the only way that we can actually thrive. That's why our God, in His wisdom, is a face-to-face God. That's why He chose 12 people when He walked the earth to share with, to show Himself to. And that's why it continues even to this day. Anybody who has a relationship with Jesus has a face-to-face relationship. Now that means something that might sound strange to somebody who doesn't know the Lord at this point. But the fact is that God makes Himself known to us through Jesus. That's why when Philip, one of the disciples, he said to Jesus one time when they were having something to eat, he said, Jesus, you know what? You've been talking about the Father. You've been telling us all about the Father. And for hundreds and thousands of years, the Jewish people, the Hebrew people, the Israelites, they all had this understanding of God. And they said, and Philip says to Jesus, just show me the Father. Just show us the Father, because that would be enough for us. Just show us who He is. Come on, let's rustle Him up somewhere. And Jesus looks at Philip and He says, don't you know me? And He says, don't you know me? We've been talking. We've been hanging out. We've been walking together. We've been working together. Philip, don't you know me? Because anybody who has seen me has seen the Father. You see, I've come down face to face. And through me, you see the truth. Through me, you see who God is. Through me, you see His heart. Through me, you see His plan and His purpose. And do you know what? It continues on. I love this when it says in 1 John 1, and this is one of the disciples saying this to the church. He says, we proclaim to you the one who existed from the beginning and whom we have heard and seen. This is what the disciples were doing for the church now. He said, we are proclaiming to you that which we have heard and that which we have seen. We have seen Him face to face. And this is what we declare to you so that you would know the truth. We're not telling you something that we heard of. We're not flicking something to you that we saw online. No, what we're going to tell you is something that we saw face to face. We saw Him. We heard Him. We know Him. And that is what we're going to proclaim to you. It is powerful. Face-to-face conversation. It's powerful, this face-to-face contact, because that's where you hear the truth. They say that in communication, 97% of all communication is non-verbal. 3% is actually the words you say. Think about that. That 97% is about your body language. It's about your tone. It's about your inflection. It's about the pace of your words. 97%. If we are relying online through text messages, if we're relying through emails, if we're relying through our social media, then we are only getting 3% of the truth, and 97% is being absolutely lost. How many of us know that when we send a text message, we've got the luxury of the delete button? Who here has ever sent a text and then thought, no, that doesn't sound right? Delete, 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 delete. How many of us have rejigged an email? How many of us have taken photos for social media and gone, and then looked and thought, oh, can't send that. Delete. Like, okay, filter. Crop. I mean, for one photo, you could be there like for 10 minutes. Trying to make it good. Trying to make it like, your best side. But this is where face-to-face is scary. Even though face-to-face is actually the most effective form of communication, it is scary. And this is where we've got a crisis in our families. You see, in a face-to-face conversation, you cannot edit. In a face-to-face conversation, you can't press delete. Have you ever had that situation where you've said something and you thought, I just don't want to take that back? You can't take it back. It's out there. Not only is a face-to-face conversation you can't edit, delete, you can't put a filter on it. You can't put a filter on yourself. I mean, you can't just say, sorry, I can't talk to you in this position. Can you sit over there because this is my better side? And in fact, could you so that you're kind of looking like that down because that's better light. Do you know what I'm saying? Conversations are just scary because you can't control it. You can't control what somebody else is going to react or how somebody's going to react to you. It's scary. Do you know, it's not just scary, but it's messy. It's messy because sometimes you don't know the words. Sometimes you don't have it all. You haven't quite got it clarified in your own head. And as you're speaking it, you're kind of working out what it is that you're trying to say. Anybody been in that situation? See, with an email, you can formulate it and you can tweak it and you can, make it all pretty. And with a text, you can make it all succinct. But in a conversation, you stumble over your words. You say things that you don't mean. It's messy. We don't want that. We want to be in control. We want to know exactly. But also, a real conversation is in real time. And the person's right there in front of you. And you've got to deal with their response. I mean, how many times have you been ticked with somebody and you send them a text? Ticked. But you don't have to deal with their response. You don't have to deal with how it hurt them. You don't have to look in their eyes when you see them read it. No, that's easier. But the fact is, face-to-face conversations are powerful because they're messy. And did you know that messiness is part of it? It's part of our growth. It's part of our development. It's part of how we figure out who we are and who we aren't. You take that away from us and we don't know who we are. When I was, when Georgia was in high school, I was part of the governing body. And I was there for all the conversations that they were having. And the alarm in the school environment across the board of how students were finding it hard to cope with exams. Anxiety was on the increase. Stress was on the increase. Depression was on the increase. And how they were trying to throw all the resources at these kids, all the resources at these students to try and help them manage, to take them to a dark room. And so they could calm down, to teach them mindfulness. And all the teachers going on mindfulness courses so that they could be teaching how the students could relax. Even now, we've got in our universities trigger warnings in case somebody gets offended. Somebody hears something that they don't want to hear. Maybe somebody says something that a person doesn't believe. And they're creating safe spaces for you if you feel threatened or if you feel hurt, that you can go to those places. I'll tell you what face-to-face communication does. He said it builds strength, fortitude. It makes you resilient. And what we're doing by not addressing the issue of our face-to-face communication and from hiding from each other, we are hiding from each other through our devices. We're pushing each other away because it's too hard. It's too messy. I can't control it. I don't have the time. A text is quicker. I don't have to deal with your response. What we're doing is we're building a weak generation who cannot cope with the pressure of daily life. But a face-to-face communication communicates strength, communicates acceptance, communicates that you are bigger than this challenge. This is not going to break you, it's going to make you. You can rise up, you can get over this, you can overcome. You were born for this hardship. That's what face-to-face communication does. It builds strength. And I tell you what, it gives identity. Are we going to give our children, our generation, to the bloggers and the Instagrammers of this world? Who don't see their eyes, who don't know who they are, and then we're going to give them and say, find your identity out there. Your identity is here. I'm going to tell you who you are. Nobody else has that responsibility. I'm going to look you in the eye and I'm going to tell you who you are. That you are strong, that you are good, that you are a child of God, that you were born in the heart of God, that you are worthy, that you are equipped, that you have everything you need. That is not anybody else's responsibility. It is my responsibility. It is your responsibility. It's face to face that we confirm, that we affirm the truth of God's word to each other. It's face to face. I tell you that you're going to make it. It's face to face that I tell you that God is with you. It is face to face that I tell you that you are loved. It is face to face that I tell you who you are. God does it to us. And no less should we do it for each other. That's why we say, go to a life group. You know why? It's not because we think, oh, you know, that's church and that's what you do, right? No, because that's where we look at each other. That's where we build that relationship. That's where we build intimacy. That's when you get that intimacy that you need of being known, celebrated, supported, encouraged, where people are going to look you in the eye and tell you the truth. They're going to celebrate you. They're going to support you. They're going to encourage you. That word encourage is such a good word because it means to put courage inside. It doesn't happen through a text. It happens face to face. It's time to put away our devices for intimacy. They have their place. It's time to put them away, and it's time to get face to face. And it's time to have a conversation. If I could write a book, The Dying Art of Conversation. Conversation face to face. You see, we think that little texts throughout the day kind of magically join together to create a conversation. That's not the way it works. You see, my conversation with you is 97% how I relate to you physically. 97% my voice. How I talk to you. You see, I would say that we are frightened of conversations because of their messiness and their scariness and the fact that we can't control them, that we avoid them. But I would say in this place that there are missing conversations. Conversations that you know you need to have. But you put it off and you put it off and you put it off because you can't control the outcome. Maybe it's a tough conversation. Maybe it's just an honest conversation. I would say that there are conversations in this place that are simple. Simple as this. I'm sorry. I got it wrong, and I'm going to do better. That's not an email. That's not a text. That's not even a Snapchat. That's a face-to-face conversation. It's time to have a conversation. It's time to have a conversation with our spouses. It's time to have a conversation with our children. It's time to have a conversation with our friends. It's time to have a conversation with our work colleagues. We cannot relegate these things. We cannot sacrifice intimacy for connection, because that's just not the way it works. You know, sometimes we don't even know what to say. So I've got some questions that I've put up on the screen. Just put them up. These are just a few questions. I've got about 10 of these questions that are just, questions to start up a conversation. They're not deep questions. Some of them might be. But I'm going to put that on social media and I'm probably on our website, just so that if you're like, what can I say? Just use one of these questions, and you never know where it could lead. But I'll tell you where it's going to lead. When you have a conversation face to face, it's going to lead to bonding. It's going to lead to strength. It's going to lead to relationship. It's going to lead to life, strength. You know what I mean? That nurture. It's going to lead to community. It's going to lead to family. That's why we say that church is family. We are face to face in this place. Amen.